Arlo recently did a video about Metroid that this was based on, so just know I'm not stealing ideas. I mean, I am, but at least I'm giving credit. The Legend of Zelda is one of the most popular, and by far, my favorite game series. Recently I tried doing a video of my top 10 games, and instead of going 10 through 1, I had to do 10 through 2, then 1A, 1B, 1C, and so on, because I didn't want to oversaturate the list of Zelda games. So, if I knew someone who I think would enjoy the Zelda series, what game would I start them on? Well, like Game Essay's similar video, I'll be doing two routes. One route is someone who has barely, if ever, played video games. The other is someone who has experienced gaming, especially 3D games. So let's begin. What game would I start with? Well, on one hand, people say start with the 3D games because they're more integral to the story, and they're more popular, I think. On another hand, some people would say begin with the 2D games because 3D spaces can be hard to traverse for a beginner gamer. Personally, I think for a beginner gamer, you should pick a 2D game that has enough mechanics to get someone used to controlling video games. I think you can start with 3D games after just one 2D game. I think this is the way to go because since 2D games are generally older and on weaker hardware, I personally find them harder. So in summary, for beginners, one 2D game followed by at least one 3D game. But what 2D game to begin with? Well, could always start with the original. A Link to the Past is iconic, and Link Between Worlds is the newest and arguably the best. But I'm going to pick a dark horse, one that many will argue with because it's not a classic Zelda story. I'm picking Link's Awakening to start for beginners. The main reason for me is there's a Switch version. It has easy-to-see graphics and many quality of life improvements compared to the Game Boy Color games. You only had 2 buttons, and the sword and shield were items you had to switch onto. Switching between all these items can be frustrating for new players trying to get used to gaming. Let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. What games do you need to play the least? Ironically, it's the original 2. The Legend of Zelda and The Adventure of Link are hard, vague, and confusing. I've never made it far in either, and they don't contain much context for their stories without their original manuals. I want to play them and think you shouldn't just ignore them, so put them last on the list. Remember, you're going to need that experience when you play these two. Now the debate in my head, what order do we play the 3D games in? Well, there's 2 that I think we should start with, and then 4 that aren't really in the conversation. My Zelda experience started around 2008 with The Wind Waker, so I have a nostalgic bias towards it, but I do think it's the easiest. Now, it may be because I cheated, come on, I was 5, and watched video walkthroughs, so I have the story playthrough locked down, except for the Wind Temple. But the classic, the so-called best game of all time, Ocarina of Time makes a strong case. It is the quintessential Zelda formula. 3 dungeons, something happens, then 5 dungeons revisiting the 3 areas, and then 2 new ones, and finally a final dungeon and final boss. Here's the thing, I think these are the easiest 2 of the 3D games, but I think Wind Waker is significantly easier. But the sailing! The only games that are similar in terms of traversal are the 2 sequels, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Listen, I think Wind Waker is a better game, but Ocarina of Time is a better Zelda game. It is the Zelda game. Disclaimer, I've never beaten Majora's Mask. Alright, now it's time for my order. So for new players, I would go Link's Awakening for the Switch, The Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, The Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages or Seasons, Oracle of Ages or Seasons, A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, Majora's Mask, Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link, Triforce Heroes, 4 Swords Adventures, and 4 Swords. And for the experienced players, I would go Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, Link's Awakening for the Switch, The Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, Link's Awakening DX, Oracle of Ages or Seasons, Oracle of Ages or Seasons, Breath of the Wild, The Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link, Triforce Heroes, 4 Swords Adventures, and 4 Swords. Okay, I lied. I have the 2 multiplayer optional and the 1 multiplayer required games at the end, just because I think there's going to be a period of time when you're trying to find people to play them with. Now, I put Breath of the Wild towards the end because A, you'll likely spend a lot longer on it, B, it's significantly harder than the others, and C, it's open world, so it's basically a 3D version of the original, which as I said, I have at the end. My last note, I put Skyward Sword before Twilight Princess for newbies because I think it's easier and non-button controls won't be as frustrating for people who haven't played games as much. But I put the more challenging Twilight Princess ahead for experienced gamers because I just think it's a better game, it's more traditional Zelda, and it's less gimmicky. So those are the orders I think a new Zelda fan should play the games in. Let me know your order, and let me know your favorite Zelda games. And again, thanks to Arlo for inspiring this video. And also thanks to YouTubers like Scott the Wasp, Peanut Butter Gamer, and The Completionist for just keeping me motivated to make gaming videos. Alright, subscribe. Bye.